everyone, my name is Adrianna, and welcome to the Nutrition Podcast series brought to you by the Health Peers. For those who aren't familiar with us yet, the Health Peers do a wide range of outreaches on a number of topics related to nutrition, physical activity, mental health, sexual health, and more. Now we'd like to thank you for joining us for our third episode of our new podcast series called Let's Talk About Nutrition. In this podcast series, we cover topics like healthy eating, navigating food around the holidays, tips to avoid processed sugars, and today's topic on healthy eating during final season. For this podcast, we want to respectfully acknowledge that we are recording from the unceded traditional Coast Salish lands, which include the Tsleil-Waututh, Kwikwetlem, qiqéyt, Stz'uminus, Katzie, Tsawwassen, and SāNEĆ nation. I also wanted to share a little bit of information on one of these nations, the SÁNEČ nation. This means emerging people, which refers to an ancient story of a great flood for which their land emerged from. I would also like to take this time to introduce my co-hosts for this podcast and fellow health peers. So please welcome Aleisha, Jessica, and Tamara. And without further ado, let's talk about healthy eating habits during final season. Before we get into some different topics on some common eating habits during finals and our commonly used mindful habits and tips, we wanted to mention that there is no right or wrong way to eat, and there's no good or bad foods to avoid or consume. All foods, when enjoyed mindfully, can be a part of a nutritious diet, and what works for one person may be different from what works for you. With that said, most of us can attest that final season is often extremely busy, and it can be stressful to keep up with so many different deadlines. With this added stress, we may sometimes neglect our health and well-being and adopt some of these unhealthier habits. One in particular is called stress eating, and this is eating as a way to suppress or soothe negative emotions that stress can bring. To be aware of stress eating during your finals prep, reflect and ask yourself if you change your eating habits when there are stressors in your life. You're eating when you're not even hungry, maybe you don't even eat at all, or you eat to avoid studying or working. And to help overcome patterns of stress eating, perhaps it can then be helpful to practice mindful eating, which is to be aware of how we are fueling our bodies, focusing on what makes us feel good, and listening to our body signals of taste, hunger, and satiety. It may also be helpful to try out some positive coping mechanisms to overcome stress eating. These can be things like talking to a friend or family member, giving yourself lots of breaks throughout the day, making a to-do list and crossing off items once they are complete, get some fresh air by going for a walk, and lastly, to recognize when you need more help. So please visit SFU's Health and Counseling website for more resources in this area, or download and use the My SSP app for connection to support whenever you need it. Now, I would like to ask my fellow health peers, how do you all adopt positive coping mechanisms to overcome the challenges that stressful eating may bring? So maybe Tamara, we'll start with you.
Thank you for mentioning all those positive coping mechanisms. I think you had some really great suggestions. I know for myself, one of the mechanisms that I like to use, I think you mentioned, is to take breaks. I know when studying, I can get very bored when it's been a while. So I try to take at least a few breaks an hour, even if it's just getting up out of my study space and walking around my house. I find it really helps just to clear my mind and give me a fresh start when starting again. And it helps me from just eating out of boredom or eating just because. And I think it just really helps me study and focus better. What about you, Jessica?
Yeah, I think taking breaks is a really good idea. I also like to create a healthy eating schedule, as this helps me plan my meals and snacks throughout the day. This helps me feel less stress and also makes eating a positive experience and something I look forward to doing. Aleisha, what is your favorite method?
I really liked your point about mindful eating, Adrianna. I feel like when I'm bored, I often find difficulties in differentiating between whether I am hungry or if I am just avoiding school and exams. So I often practice mindfulness by just thinking about how my body feels. If I tell myself I'll grab a snack in 10 minutes, do I find myself able to wait those 10 minutes? Or do I find myself easily forgetting about it when I focus on a task? And I feel like the more you practice this and the more you get attuned to your body signals, the easier it is to differentiate whether you're hungry or if you are bored, which kind of leads me to our next topic, which is combating boredom eating or mindless snacking. I know when I'm studying for finals and I get bored or I find myself zoning out, I often take a break, which usually means walking to the fridge and grabbing a snack. But there are so many other ways to take a meaningful break that doesn't use food to avoid exam stress. I've recently started taking breaks where I just walk around my room, or maybe I do some stretches. And I find this also allows me to take some time to process things, which is also very important when studying. And often these movement breaks help wake me up too. I also find that when I'm studying, I often forget to drink water and stay hydrated. So sometimes I'll make some tea when I take a break, or I just grab some water, or at the start of every break, I drink some water. And this also helps make sure that I'm staying hydrated, and it will help me also differentiate between those hunger pangs and determine whether it is because I'm thirsty or not. It's also important to remember that snacking is completely okay. And I often find more filling snacks to munch on, like foods packed with fiber and protein, such as fruits and vegetables. They give me that crunch and they'll also fill me up. And I recently made carrots and apple chips, which are actually easier than I thought they would be. And I put some spices, I put some cinnamons on my apple, and I just put it in the stove and baked it for a bit. And it worked out really great. So what's everyone's favorite study snack to eat? What about you, Adrianna?
Oh, I really like what you said about having a snack that's paired with a protein. I find that really helps me to stay full for longer, and then it'll help me avoid eating more kind of mindless snacks throughout the day. So I like to have Greek yogurt with some fruit if I want something a bit sweeter. Or if I want something a bit more savory, I'll do like a hard-boiled egg with some cucumber coins or some carrot dip. How about you, Jessica?
Those all sound really delicious. When I study, I like to eat apples dipped in peanut butter. And since I'm a huge chocolate lover, I also sometimes like to melt some dark chocolate and drizzle it on top. It's a really easy snack to make and takes no time at all. What's your favorite study snack, Tamara?
I definitely like apples and peanut butter too, but I haven't tried it with the chocolate. So I will definitely have to try that because it sounds so delicious. But lately I've been into eating hummus and crackers. Sometimes I just crave something a little bit more savory, and I find that that really helps with that craving. And then the chickpeas in the hummus can be very filling as well. But that brings me on to our next topic. So I know we've been talking a bit about snacks and food, but sometimes instead of snacking on food, we turn to different drinks which contain sugar or caffeine to help provide us with energy and power us through long study sessions. Energy drinks and coffee can be helpful to give you an extra boost of energy and improve your concentration, or maybe you just like the taste. I know I like the taste of coffee myself. So for adults, it appears that it's safe to consume up to 400 milligrams of caffeine a day. So to put it into context, that's roughly equal to the amount of caffeine in about 4 cups of coffee, 10 cans of Coke, or 2 energy shot drinks. But this is just a rough estimate because the actual caffeine content in these drinks does vary. And also, it's important to note that just because this is considered a safe amount, it doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy to drink this much caffeine a day. Sometimes too much consumption of caffeinated beverages can actually lead to problems like headaches, trouble sleeping, elevated heart rate, or restlessness. So, to be mindful of caffeine and sugar consumption, one of the best ways is to just keep tabs on how much you're drinking. So, for example, if you're drinking coffee, just try to keep track of how many cups you've had in a day. And if it seems like it's been a bit much, maybe try to drink one less or a smaller cup the next day. And if you're drinking energy drinks, just be sure to read the nutrition label and see how much caffeine and sugar you're actually consuming. And one other option is maybe to try drinking decaffeinated coffee or tea because it usually tastes the same, but it just has less caffeine than a regular drink would. And one last thing to keep in mind is that if you are tired and you're lacking sleep and using caffeine as a solution, it might actually make the problem worse. So for some people, this can lead to a cycle of drinking caffeinated beverages to stay awake and then having trouble falling asleep later in the night, which again just shortens the amount of time spent sleeping overall. So sometimes the best thing to do, instead of studying for long hours or pulling an all-nighter before your test powered by caffeine, sugar, and snacking to stay awake, the best thing to do is just to take a break and get a fair amount of sleep and then start fresh in the morning. So my question for my fellow health peers is, do you like drinking caffeinated beverages? And if so, how do you keep track just to make sure that you're drinking a healthy amount? Maybe we can start with Aleisha.
I really liked your point about keeping track of your intake and then slowly drinking smaller amounts if you are drinking an excess amount. I used to be a really big coffee drinker, and I wouldn't be able to function in the morning if I didn't have a mug full of coffee. And slowly that started increasing, and I realized that I was drinking too much coffee. So I slowly started weaning myself off of coffee, and eventually I decided that I don't want to drink coffee anymore. And I started drinking green tea, and green tea has less caffeine, which is really nice because I can drink lots of it too. Although you should also practice moderation for drinking caffeinated teas too. And I also like to make sure that I drink my green tea before 12 because I often find myself having difficulties sleeping if it's past 12. And that usually starts this really bad cycle for me where I can't sleep and then I need more caffeine in the morning to stay awake. So just being mindful of my own body's needs and how it functions when I drink caffeine. What about you, Adrianna?
I think I'm a bit opposite to you. I can have caffeine any time of the day and I feel totally fine, which is a little worrisome if I'm just trying to keep my caffeine content in check. But usually I'll start my day with a cup of coffee and then in the night I'll have a herbal tea, like a rooibos tea or something like that, which have that caffeine content. And then I've also been trying out carbonated herbal teas, which can be like a fun, different option to try out if you need something that's bubbly, but it's also got that herbal tea taste as well. How about you, Jessica?
I also like coffee as well. I try to limit my caffeine consumption by choosing to only drink coffee a couple times a week. I'm also able to avoid drinking too much coffee by staying hydrated and drinking lots of water throughout the day, since being dehydrated is actually one of the common reasons why we feel tired. That brings me to the next topic I'll be covering, which is on skipping meals. What are the negative outcomes associated with this? And some tips to avoid skipping meals throughout the day. Skipping meals or going a long time without eating can cause your blood sugar to decrease, which is your body's primary energy source. So when your blood sugar decreases, this causes you to feel tired, sluggish, and overall not in the best mood. As many of you probably already know, breakfast is known as the most important meal of the day. But why is it actually the most important? As the name suggests, breakfast breaks the overnight fasting period. It replenishes your supply of glucose to boost your energy levels and alertness, which is necessary to keep you energized for the rest of the day. Breakfast can also regulate your hunger throughout the day. If your body doesn't get that fuel in the morning, it could throw off your body's rhythm of fasting and eating, making you most likely overeat later in the day. Skipping breakfast or any meal of the day can also be thought as a missed opportunity for you to consume your recommended daily intake for essential nutrients and vitamins that your body needs. Some tips to avoid skipping meals is to have healthy snacks prepared to hold you over until your next meal. Try eating snacks high in fiber and protein, as they will keep you full longer. Another useful method is meal prepping. Planning your meals in advance and preparing them the night before is a great way to avoid skipping meals, especially on those busy weeks. Now we know more about the importance of not skipping meals. It's also crucial to recognize the timing we consume meals throughout the day. As a suggestion, you could limit your meals and snacks to a 10 to 12 hour time frame during the day, avoiding eating late at night. Eating within 2 hours of going to bed can contribute to indigestion, heartburn, or sleeping problems. An example of an eating schedule that you could try is eating between 7 a.m. and 8 or 9 p.m. Just remember this is a suggestion and is just a general guide you could follow and can definitely be flexible to work for your schedule. Most importantly, listen to your body's signals and eat when you feel hungry. And know it's okay to bend your eating schedule if that's what your body needs. And with all that being said, I also want to note that what works for one person may not work for someone else. So it's best to develop healthy eating habits and try to find what works for your lifestyle and not to be too hard on yourself about it. As important as it is to be educated on healthy eating habits, it's also important to be kind to yourself when it comes to your nutrition journey. So now I'd like to hear more perspectives on this topic from the other health people. What are some of your favorite strategies to avoid skipping meals? Let's start off with Adrianna.
All right. So I think you made some really good points there, but something that I like to do is kind of plan out what I'm going to be eating the night before. That way I know kind of what I want for breakfast and what I want to cook for dinner. And I really love to cook and healthy treats. So I kind of give myself that time in the day to just take a break from studying and just use cooking and baking as my time to really just relax and enjoy the process of making really delicious and healthy foods. How about you, Aleisha?
Yes, I really liked what you said. I also like to just de-stress and take some time for myself by cooking because there's something about making something that just helps me feel better about myself too and helps motivate me. And I also find that I look forward to meals more when I actually make the meals. So it makes mealtime more exciting. I also like to practice mindful eating here, where I listen to my own body's needs. So I like to plan my snacks. Like if it's approaching mealtime, I usually like to say, should I eat this or should I just wait for lunch or dinner? And I like to just listen to my body's signals. I also live at home, so getting company from family members is a really great way to also avoid skipping meals. What about you, Tamara?
Yeah, I think that was a really great point you made about listening to your body. And also, I am kind of in a similar situation where I live at home as well. So to make sure that I'm not skipping meals, usually I just eat with family members who also live in the house. So if I'm studying for a long time, sometimes I know it's easy to lose track of time. But then I kind of get brought back when my family says, oh, we're going to eat dinner now or whatever. And then it go, oh yeah, like maybe I should eat too. But I think if you're not in a situation like that, another way maybe to avoid skipping meals is if you just write it out on your to-do list for the day. It might sound a little silly, but if you write out at lunch, okay, eat lunch at 12 o'clock, eat dinner at 6 or whatever, then it can help keep you on track, because I know some days can get really busy, and especially being home all the time, it's just so easy to lose track of time quickly. But I think those are just a few suggestions. But other than that, that concludes our episode for today about eating habits during final season. And we really hope that you found this episode helpful and now know a little bit more about practicing mindful eating and using positive coping mechanisms to avoid stress eating, how to take meaningful breaks and eat filling foods, being mindful of the amount of caffeine and sugar you consume when drinking different beverages, and trying to maintain a healthy eating schedule and be aware of not skipping meals. So we encourage you to keep these points in mind during the upcoming final exam season and just in general every day. And we would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. So please leave a comment down below sharing some of your favorite study snacks, and if you have any other tips for maintaining healthy eating habits during final season. Also, please be sure to check out the description box for links to some SFU health and counseling resources that we mentioned earlier, as well as some other helpful links. Be sure to give our previous 2 podcasts a listen if you haven't already, and stay tuned for our next podcast to talk about more nutrition topics. So thank you again for listening. Stay safe and healthy, and good luck on any final exams.